Medieval fantasy has captivated me ever since I can remember. At a young age, I was swept deep into the stories of King Arthur, his relationship with Merlin, and the magic that was woven inside of their mystical forests and castles. From movies to Saturday morning cartoons and comics, the tales of knights possessing and using the magical powers and items bestowed to them from a wise and mystical elder has amazed me. And that's when I happened upon Wizards and Warriors, that all of these amazing things came together in the most fantastic game. The cover art of the game and the actual in-game art are vastly different, but I take no offense to that, as this was basically an industry standard by then. The cover of Wizards and Warriors shows Kuros, a knight warrior of the Books of Excalibur, swinging what appears to be a mythical sword, sort of a long sword katana hybrid one would expect to find in a medieval fantasy adventure game. Artists Tim Stamper and Rachel Edwards were no doubt inspired by decades of medieval fantasy art that had graced Dungeons & Dragons books and magazines by that time. It was a bit of a shock to me when I let the main title screen play on to discover a picture of Kuros clad in full golden armor with a sword in each hand, facing off with two larger knights donned with shields and horned helms. This was certainly not the Kuros we saw on the cover. However, in the case for both Kuroses, I liked the way he appeared on the cover art of the game. It had a Conan the Barbarian feel to it, and I wasn't disappointed in the golden armored Kuros, as that was what I was used to seeing when I thought of a more traditional knight in armor. Even though Kuros' armor never turns gold, and he doesn't fight with dual weapons, the gold was a good contrast against the darker clad enemies after the title screen. Alongside Kuros on the cover art, you see the face of the game's antagonist, the evil wizard Malkil. Malkil's face rests in the clouds, a reminder of who you are ultimately facing, and a warning that the evil is all around you, watching and waiting. Malkil's lore wastes no time in letting you know how powerful he is. He was said to be a teacher of Merlin, and while his magic was not always used for evil, it had eventually pushed him beyond the brink of sanity, and now he and his minions have captured several maidens, including the Princess of Elrond, and are keeping her in the depths of Castle Ironspire, a magical fortress beyond the woods. The cover art also features a handful of Malkil's minions, hyena-type creatures with permanent tooth-filled snarls and manic grins. They carry a variety of axes, and like the golden Kuros, you won't actually find them anywhere in the interior of the game. Larger NES contributors are quickly recognized by their style of graphics. While every game on the NES is confined to an 8-bit arena, there are companies that stand out. Konami and Capcom are two that come to mind. However, Wizards and Warriors was only the second game produced by a developer named Rare and was published by Acclaim Entertainment and Jaleco. The only game created by Rare before Wizards and Warriors was Slalom, an 8-bit skiing game that resides in the NES Black Box collection. While Slalom had a bland and lighter palette of whites, blues, and greens for skiers and landscapes, Wizards and Warriors took a magnificently dark turn into purples, reds, and browns that played off the darkness of the caverns and upheld the traditional colors of forests and of castle interiors. You are dropped into the forest in a very neutral gray suit of armor. This gray, however, is an advantage because that particular shade of gray appears nowhere else in the game, and while your armor will change colors for limited times due to the use of magic items, this neutral tone ironically helps you stand out in the game's dark and haunting palette. Color plays a major role in signifying stages, giving individuality to what could easily be cookie cutter or assembly line stages, and gives them a significant value of their own. A large portion of your time is spent underground, traversing through 3 large sets of caverns. On the map, they're shaded with a blue, orange, red, and purple tint, and when you enter them, the shades don't change or disappoint. The forests, which bookend your journey through the caverns, keep their traditional browns and greens, and the color palette is spent on enemies that litter the landscape. In the caverns, you have a few enemies that match the color of their surroundings, which of course helps keep you on your toes. Color has also been brilliantly used to help you with treasure, inventory, and finding significant points throughout the stages. At the end of each stage stands a knight, much like yourself. They are clad in a deep red suit of armor that does not change color. They guard the final door or passage to an area that leads to the stage's boss. These red knights demand payment, and this is done with large gemstones you find throughout the stage. Again, Wizards & Warriors does a great job of keeping these gemstones bright and unique. That way, none are missed when you're having to jump around while simultaneously fighting off hordes of creatures. There are other doors throughout the stages that require keys to open, and these keys are brightly colored, matching the doors they correspond to. The red, blue, and pink used to match these keys and doors stand out, and again, helps when you're in a rush or trying to avoid enemy fire. A personal favorite use of color in Wizards & Warriors is on the magic items. Seeing a potion appear in front of you is magic all on its own. Watching small glimmers of light dance and then converge to create bottles of magic elixir is great. And the shades of pinks, blues, and reds used to create the bottles and their contents help them stand out in areas where it may be difficult to grab them due to the amount of activity going on. This game also does a fantastic job managing color schemes with magic items that become permanent fixtures in your inventory. Kuros ends up with an amazing collection of items, and while some definitely have more value and use than others, great care is taken to give them their own unique colors, from the purples of the Feather of Falling to the green of the Cloak of Darkness. The magic items stand apart in your inventory, which is a great touch. With so many moving enemies, color also helps distinguish where everything is going and what to avoid. During the game, Kuros will encounter several flying enemies, and separating them from the background is crucial because some of these flying enemies are infinite in number. If you're lucky, Kuros will discover the Dagger of Throwing, the Battle Axe of Agor, the Wand of Wonder, or the legendary Staff of Power. These items enable Kuros to become a ranged attacker by either hurling the dagger or axe, which magically returns after reaching a certain distance, or hitting an enemy, or shooting a small cluster of magic orbs from the wand and staff. The colors chosen for the dagger and axe are useful, but one could argue that the weapons returning on their own is what really sets them apart and gives the player confidence. The Wand of Wonder and Staff of Power, while having unlimited uses, does use a distinct color and sound, letting you know where you are going with it. The bosses of the game are all fought in separate cavernous areas or actual caves with confined spaces, so with the backgrounds remaining black and Kuros running in his gray armor, the color palettes for the bosses are unique and definitely stand out during battles. Wizards & Warriors firmly believes having the high ground wins battles, and the monsters Kuros comes across are predominantly flying through the air or crawling down from above to land on his helmet. In a game with magic being one of the main elements, it's the enemies you'd find in the natural world that seem to give Kuros the most trouble. In the forest, the hollowed trees you climb are infested with hornets, wasps, and large spiders. Outside, the canopies are swarming with large birds and bats. There are ground enemies like snakes, and other oddities like these weird gnomes and these perched, I guess they're harpies, maybe? In the caverns, the bats become your biggest obstacle, constantly swarming you from every direction, and you see what I can only describe as haunted or possessed stalagmites rising from the cavern floors, their jack-o'-lantern faces searching for potential victims. Wizards & Warriors is not a game you can stand still for very long in. There is no clearing of a stage and its enemies. The creatures that reside in this game are infinite in number, and leaving an area just momentarily, then returning, will respawn a majority of them. If you think of your hand-eye coordination with Wizards & Warriors like it's a brand new pencil right out of the box, then by the time you're done running through this gauntlet of creatures, it'll be surgically sharp. And one of the most challenging enemies in the game isn't even a living being. There are stone skulls imbued with a powerful magic placed in certain areas of the game. At first, They're found in small cavern chambers where you have to crawl inside to get keys, and they're also stationed in secret gem vaults Kuros may stumble upon. The skulls shoot an unlimited number of magical projectiles that can hone in on Kuros' position as long as he's within a certain distance of them. And you will never come across a solitary skull. These things are mounted in groups, and as you descend deeper into Castle Ironspire, Malkiel piles them up like throw pillows on a living room sofa. They rest on small platforms, adorn doorways and tight passages, and they're immune to the effects of your weapons and even the flashing egg. However, if you feel like literally kicking the ant pile, the boots of force will topple the skulls and take them out of commission. But be warned, while you're standing there putting the boot to one skull, the others around it will blast you without mercy. The bosses of Wizards and Warriors are what wait at the end of each stage and guard the maidens taken by Malkiel. The bosses are all very unique and set well with the overall theme of the game. The bosses are a veritable Halloween grab bag. There's a giant skull, and later you'll get a whole skeleton. There's a huge swarm of bats, a massive spider, and different ghosts and spirits. All of the bosses are fought within the same setting. Kuros enters from the left, and your goal is to defeat the boss and make it to the passage on the right. The final encounter, Malkiel, puts you in a completely different setting under very different circumstances. Up until now, the bosses you've encountered follow basic patterns and stay confined within the caverns you battle them in. Some bosses may leave the screen, but it's momentarily, and it's not too hard to decipher where they'll pivot to next. Malkiel is waiting in a circular cavern deep beneath Ironspire. The terrain is shaped to give the appearance of a large skull, and Kuros can climb onto the ledges and outcroppings that create the skull's eyes and teeth. Malkiel has the ability to teleport and will use it at every opportunity. He possesses a staff that fires an unlimited amount of magic at Kuros, so he doesn't have to come close to you to harm you. There are numerous strategies on how to deal with Malkiel. If you want to keep your distance and play it safe, I suggest the Battle Axe of Agor, but if you literally want to deliver an ass-kicking, strap on your boots of force and go for it. The first time I entered Malkiel's chamber, I was sweating bullets. I tried to find a safe place to stand and get my bearings, but Malkiel comes out swinging. He doesn't summon any minions or conjure any help. He fights you one-on-one. I couldn't get my sweaty palms dry enough, no matter how much I rubbed them on my shorts or the carpet. One of the major high points of Wizards and Warriors is its collection of magic items. There are items that give you points, but aren't critical to winning the game or completing the stages. I wanted to take a look at the items that do help you as you play. The alarm clock freezes time for all of the enemies on the screen for 3 seconds. As I said before about color, they keep the alarm clock flashing in shades of blue and red, and it helps it stand out from the background and its busy enemies. There's an egg that has the same color and lighting properties as the alarm clock, but the egg will instantly destroy all of the enemies on the screen the second you touch it. Wizards and Warriors is such a fast-paced game that if you're new to it and have no maps or other references, these two items can be lifesavers when you're low on health and or in an area that might be difficult to jump out of. Unfortunately, there is no magic item that restores your health, but the game does provide you with pieces of meat that can put 2 bars of health back on your meter. The great thing about this is it always appears in the same place on the stages, so if you're trying to plan a route through a stage, the health you need will be there waiting. Earlier I talked briefly about the color-coded potions and their appearance, but now I'd like to look at what they do. When Kuros drinks a potion, his armor will glow in the color of the potion he drank. You've got about 15 seconds to use the potion's powers before they expire, and you go back to your traditional gray armor. The pink potion helps Kuros jump much higher than normal, allowing him to access areas he couldn't previously. The pink potion is critical in some parts of the game, and you literally cannot advance any further without it. The red potion makes Kuros invincible to all forms of damage and enemy attacks. This means enemies that could strike you, leaving you dizzy or knocking you off balance, can no longer do that while your armor glows red. The blue potion allows Kyros to run and leap faster and farther than normal. While this is my favorite color potion, this one must be taken with caution. The speed Kyros normally travels in definitely takes a major boost, and if you're on a small platform or tree branch, this could put you in a dangerous position when you start to move. The blue potion has received a bad reputation from players for taking what were pretty manageable controls and boosting Kyros into 5th gear, rocketing him out of control. But in defense of the blue potion, most are given or found where Kyros needs to make a wide jump or move through an area that is more open but could fill up with enemies quickly in a short amount of time. If used correctly, the blue potion can give an advantage equal to its red and pink counterparts. Kyros has an area near his health bar dedicated to his permanent equipment. This is gear that will stay with him for the duration of the game, but players need to be cautious. Not everything you find will stay in Kyros' inventory. Items will replace each other, and going back to get a magic item again isn't an option, unless you feel like hitting that reset button. The Dagger of Throwing was the first magical weapon I found in Wizards and Warriors, and when I threw it and watched it clumsily spin and return to me, I was immediately reminded of Link's boomerang in The Legend of Zelda. The Dagger of Throwing, however, seemed to leave Kyros' hand with a bit more force, and since this was a 2D side-scrolling platformer, if I jumped or fell after releasing the dagger, it would return to me no matter where I stopped. In a game where so many enemies are flying at you and around you, having some type of ranged weapon is a massive advantage. But there was an even better throwing weapon waiting for Kyros, deep in a lava-filled cave, guarded by demons. There is a ledge situated high above the lava pool that saturates the bottom of the second cavern, and it contains a chest that holds the Battle Axe of Agor. Curiosity, and the need for gems, will pull Kyros up through these ledges, and possessing a red key opens the chest containing the fabled axe. When I first found the axe, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Would I lose my sword and now swing this thing? But as the discovery screen announcing the axe vanished, I pressed the B button and watched the axe move away, turning over and over, and then returning to Kyros. It was an eyebrow-raising moment for sure. Even back then, I figured the axe had to be some sort of upgrade from the dagger, considering where I found it, and I was almost halfway through the game. As a kid, I would go through the game and find small tokens of the dagger and the axe. I would grab them, not knowing what they were, and it wasn't until later I discovered that collecting these small versions of the weapons increased their range, and if you collected enough mini axes of Agor, you could hurl 2 axes simultaneously. Since Kyros is well armored, the only thing benefiting him a bit more would be a shield. As discussed earlier, the box art in the intro screen shows Kyros with no shield, but there is one out there, waiting to be found. The Shield of Protection helps Kyros block projectiles that he's facing and doesn't hinder his ability to swing his sword or throw his weapons. I was lucky enough to find this early on as a kid. I was a bit let down between the discovery screen displaying the shield and the actual shield that was placed on Kyros, but it was great to have a boost to my defense. You could beat the game without it, but honestly, as the game progresses, magical projectiles become a standard, and the Shield of Protection helps deal with them tremendously. There is one potion in Wizards of Warriors that is a permanent fixture in your inventory, the Potion of Levitation. When I found this, I knew it had to be special. The temporary potions that I were drinking were awesome and were helping me out for the small amount of time that they could, but the Potion of Levitation was something else entirely. The dark bottle containing the purple and blue liquid had a small skull attached to the glass. Fortunately, the discovery screen let me know what I had found, unlike the other nameless potions you pick up randomly. After drinking it, all I had to do was press up on the directional pad, and Kyros would levitate in the air with his boots dangling down. I remember the first time I heard the sounds of the potion's magic dance through my ears, and the small lights flicker around Kyros as he stayed suspended in midair. Another great thing about the potion was you were still able to throw your weapon from the floating position. Kyros couldn't swing his sword, but at least while you were hovering, you weren't completely vulnerable. One of the most hidden permanent items in the game is the Feather of Feather Fall. This magical feather allowed you to press up on the directional pad and drastically slow down your falls from any height. In fact, the speed you're reduced to is so slow you can still guide Kuros to the left or to the right as you fall. Kuros can take damage from falls that are too high, so this was a great item to have in your inventory. As I said earlier, Kuros' inventory can't hold everything you find, so if you find an item that fits into the final spot on the far right side of the inventory, then it will get replaced by the newest treasure. The Boots of Force can be replaced, but it is with great caution you try not to lose these. The boots serve two major functions. You can use them to kick open treasure chests you may not have keys to, and you can kick enemies with them. The damage the boots cause can rival your sword or even the battle axe of Agor. A lot of players find themselves kicking bosses with them over other conventional tactics. There are another pair of boots Kuros can find, the Boots of Lava Walk. These burnt orange boots allow Kuros to stand on lava spouts that grow from the pools of lava collected in the bottoms of caverns. While these boots look great in your inventory, they don't actually prevent you from taking damage from the lava resting on the cavern floors. They only work on the fire spouts. Also, you can't kick open chests or perform any attacks with these boots. With lava only being found in one specific set of caves, the Boots of Lava Walk may need to be left behind, perhaps for another night to discover. There is a horn that Kuros can find if he explores enough, and this horn is an excellent item for treasure hunters. If you plan on sending Kuros out to find every gem available, this horn will reveal the location of several invisible doors hidden throughout the game. The horn doesn't need any buttons to activate it. Once the horn is in range of a secret door, it will appear. These magic doors lead to vaults of gems. The only wand in the game is the Wand of Wonder. It fires a cluster of spinning projectiles that will temporarily freeze the enemies and cause a small amount of damage. You can't jump on the enemies you froze to use as a platform, which I think would have been a great feature. The Staff of Power is considered to be one of the best magic items in the game. It fires a set of 4 projectiles that fan out and can cause a good amount of damage. This item is considered being equivalent to the most powerful wizard's magic, so if you find this, you may want to hang on to it. There is one final magic item that gets a bad rap by players and critics alike, the Cloak of Darkness. Now, when I originally found this as a kid, I flipped out. To activate it, just push the select button, and Kuros is blanketed by a shadow and faint shimmering lights that silhouette him. The issue with the cloak is the visual effect is only cosmetic. It doesn't actually stop enemies from knowing your location and engaging you. The cloak also provides a minimal amount of damage reduction from non-boss enemies, which, in the long run, won't help much. Now, when I found the cloak, I thought it was amazing. I ran around everywhere with it, but when I realized how important it was to see Kuros and that he was still taking damage, I didn't activate it anymore. My favorite part about finding these items, even to this day, are the display screens for the items when you find them. It would have been easy to pop them in your inventory and let the player figure out what they are and what they do, but the game takes time to give you a healthy 8-bit close-up of what they are. 8-bit graphics today are easy to dismiss due to the advanced graphics used now. Games like Baldur's Gate, Diablo, and Elden Ring have taken medieval fantasy to realms beyond the human limit, and godlike treasures have become so commonplace that inventories and stashes in modern games are the equivalent of military arsenals and stockpiles. But in Wizards and Warriors, everything you discover is the only one of its kind. Yes, there are potions everywhere, but you found the only potion of levitation. Sure, there are 2 pairs of boots, but for an 8-bit platformer, they look very different and have completely different properties. There's only 1 wand, 1 staff, and 1 cloak, and the detailed pictures rewarded to you for finding them are accompanied by a great little 8-bit musical celebration. These treasures should be one of a kind. They were painstakingly crafted by one or perhaps a group of wizards, and then somehow ended up lost, stolen, hidden, or forgotten in the caves and forests of Elrond. Their unique looks and properties help make them priceless artifacts. As a kid, nervously scanning the screen and feeling the excitement build as I came to a chest I knew I could kick open or unlock was the fuel that kept me wanting to play. What makes this game so fitting for the title of masterpiece? As I said in the beginning of this video, a high level of artistry, skill, and craftsmanship goes into what is defined as a masterpiece. Wizards and Warriors found me at just the right time in my life. I was young, still discovering the NES library, and with no social media or internet to search, finding games through magazines, my local grocery store video rentals, or the secret whispers of NES rumors at school was all I had. My parents would take me with them to visit some friends of theirs. They were a young couple just starting out in a small apartment. They were newlyweds, and their dreams of starting a family was, at the time, still a dream. They were always so kind and thoughtful of me being in their home. I wasn't just some kid my folks drug over there to their place out of inconvenience. I was their guest. The husband, Jimmy, owned an NES and only had one game that stayed locked inside: Wizards and Warriors. As my parents and their friends visited, I was transported into the kingdom of Elrond, traveling with Kuros through the forests and caverns, rescuing maidens and finding magic items that would make even the most seasoned wizards jealous. The game was difficult, but I would eagerly press on. To be honest, I don't remember how far I made it through the game in those evenings at their apartment. We could have been there for hours, and I never would have noticed. Time inside of Wizards and Warriors stretched to an almost infinite length, and this is a feeling that gamers are very familiar with. The music, the colors, the adventure, it was all so captivating. The game received criticism for its ability to let players have unlimited continues, but I don't see this as a negative. On one hand, you could say it gives players a free pass, that by hitting the start button enough times after running out of lives, you'll eventually win due to your stubbornness, combined with your will to succeed. But that's the point. The unlimited continues are there to aid you in your commitment to defeating Malkill. Wizards and Warriors had no code system, and there were no save points. You learn what you can while you play, and once you turn the power off, you'll start back at the beginning again when you turn it on. The most difficult games in the NES library are notorious for this. My age at the time, coupled with my inexperience, not to mention the fact that I didn't have Wizards and Warriors at home, nor was it available to rent at the grocery store, meant whatever time I had to learn and play was confined to the time my parents felt like being out with their friends. The game had more than enough to hook me and keep me engaged. There might have been a dozen nights in that little apartment. I just knew I wanted to make it to the heart of Castle Ironspire and see Malkill for myself, just to catch a glimpse of the wizard resting inside the skull-shaped cavern underneath the castle's foundations. I wanted to launch my dagger of throwing, or even the battle axe of Aegor at him. I wanted to use my potion of levitation or feather of falling to avoid whatever magic he might have waiting for me. I wanted to defeat this master of Merlin, the mad genius who became consumed with evil and hatred. I wanted Kuros to win. I wanted us to win. Eventually, I would win. Wizards and Warriors would find its way into my collection, and with time, experience, and patience, I would defeat Malkill and rescue the Princess of Elrond. The ending was short and bittersweet, but it was never about the ending. It was about everything that came before it, and everything before that final screen was a masterpiece.